Hi, Lee Phillips again. I want to talk about trying to keep an ALS patient warm in bed. Problem with ALS is you're losing your muscles, they atrophy, and the circulation goes through the muscles. It doesn't go through your fat. And so they get extremely cold. They don't have any circulation. Their hands and feet are always cold and their legs are cold. They're just cold all of the time. So you pile lots of blankets on top of them, right? No, you can't do that. You don't understand. Your clothes are extremely heavy. With an ALS patient, it gets to the point where the weight of their clothes is more than they can stand. And I've talked to ALS people who sit around all day in their underwear because that's all they could take, the weight of the material on their body. So in the advanced stages, you're not going to pile a bunch of blankets on. And once you get them in bed, they're totally paralyzed. They can't move their feet. They can't do anything. So how do you keep them warm? Well, I think we've come up with a couple of ideas. One, before we put them in bed, we shower Christy each night, and we warm the bed before we start the shower. The way we warm it is we have really hot water. I've gone down, I've turned the water heater way up. It's hot enough that it'll burn you pretty good if you stick your hand under the hot water. My brand happens to be Dr. Pepper, and so we save the Dr. Peppers, well, a few of them. We drink more than we need. But we save the 2-liter bottles, and then we fill it with real hot water. And we have a number of rice bags. We've collected the rice bags, and we're going to do another YouTube on rice bags. But we have the rice bags. We heat these all in the microwave oven, and then we stack them down the middle of the bed. And we get them good and hot, stack them down the middle of the bed so that we're heating the bed, because the patient doesn't have enough heat in their body to heat the bed, or at least that's our experience with Christy. So if we have the bed warm, the actual mattress warm, before we put her on it, then it helps her stay warm substantially. So we lay those all the way down, then we cover them up, and we actually have a bunch of blankets that we made so that we could put on her in her wheelchair. These have become too heavy now. We can't do that in the wheelchair, but we stack them all up on the bed to keep that heat inside of the bed. So before she ever gets in the bed, we've warmed the bed. And you say, well, why don't you just put a heating element, a blanket, underneath her or on top of her? There again, it's too warm or too heavy to go on top. And you can't put it under them either. I mean, I tried to put a piece of plastic under the bed so that if she wet or had an accident or anything, it didn't go through on the mattress. She couldn't take that. It bothered her. Because once you're in bed, if you are totally paralyzed, you cannot move. Anything, any wrinkle, anything underneath you, by morning, feels like a stick or a rock that you're laying on. So it doesn't work to put a heating element under the individual, and it generally doesn't work to put it over the individual either. So we heat the bed very hot, then we take everything off, and we take everything out, put her in the bed, and we have a hot bed that she can get into. You have to make sure all the wrinkles are out. We'll do another YouTube on that. We also put socks on her so that she has some warmth on her feet and she doesn't mind the weight of the socks. You might note that when you are laying down, and you've maybe tried this, if your feet are straight up and the blankets roll over them, after a while that hurts. Well, she can't move her feet, so she can't move them around and adjust that. So that hurts. You have to lay them on their back. They can't breathe on their side. They can't breathe on their stomach. It has to be on the back, and it has to be elevated a little. So we put the socks on her, and then in order to make it so that her feet aren't sore, what I did is I made a board. I put a board that goes under the bed, and I put one that goes over, comes up, and these are pretty thin, so I couldn't even screw them in. What I did is I just shoe gooed them, and I like shoe goo. The answer to anything is shoe goo, right? You know that. I shoe gooed an angle piece that you get down at the hardware store and put the two boards together so one goes under the mattress and one comes up. I didn't make this one quite as high, and you can see if you come around, that's a good 8 inches, 10 inches above the mattress. It really needs to be up about here. I improvised. I just have a ceiling piece to a ceiling fan that we clip on here, and it holds the blankets up. But that way her feet can be down here and they aren't crushed by the blanket. The problem is, how do you keep this space warm? What we do is we get 2 of these hot water bottles, and we make them really, really hot. And then you stand one up in each corner of the bed, and then we get one of the bigger rice bags, and we put it really, really hot down at the bottom. Not her feet aren't on it at all, but that actually heats this tent, and it heats the tent well enough that it'll actually stay all night. We do have to help it out a little, so there's no weight on this, on her feet. So what we do is we insulate it a little more with these little blankets that we've made, and we make an insulated tent that isn't putting any weight on her feet, but we can get a fair amount of insulation from these blankets over the top of it. We actually get this longer one and we run it all the way down and tuck it in underneath the board, because you're going to lose a lot of heat even through the board and out the bottom of the bed. But if you do it like this, that will stay warm in that tent all night, and her feet will be warm, and her legs will be warm. She does not wear pajamas. She doesn't wear anything on the bottom because we have to toilet her in the night, and by the time you undress her, take her bottom of her pajamas off and her panties and everything else and try and put them back on, both of us are so awake that we never go back to sleep. So she sleeps with nothing on the bottom. We have to keep it warm for her, and then we can toilet her in a bedpan. We'll talk about that in another YouTube. But keeping the patient warm in bed is a problem. The standard techniques don't work too well, the electric blankets and stuff. So I think we figured out a way that we can keep the bed generally warm and get her warm. By the way, when she gets in bed, even though she's been in the hot shower before we put her in, her legs are going to be cold. And so we take these thinner rice bags, which we've had made for special purposes, and I'll talk to you about that, and we heat these so that they're nice and warm to the touch, not too warm, and we put them under her legs, under her thighs, put them over her legs, and we do this, change them, heat them for about an hour and a half, 2 hours after we actually put her in bed, until she's nice and warm all the way down. Lee Phillips talking on how to keep a patient warm in bed.